Welcome back to Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin. We are broadcasting from the Thacker Jewelry Studio. Start your story with engagement rings and wedding bands from Thacker Jewelry online at thackerjewelry.com. We want to go straight to the phones. We've got Congressman Arrington on the line. Congressman Arrington, how's Washington, D.C. this morning?
Broken as ever, but you know what? It's the process we have to work through to get the right policy outcomes for the American people, and hopefully they see the stark contrast between the, I'm not even going to call them Democrats anymore, because even the most reasonable Democrats have been co-opted by the left. So they have a choice between socialism and the leftist policies and, the pre-COVID prosperity, a president that does what he says, and a safer, stronger, freer America. It's that simple.
So is some of this, some of the issues, is it Nancy Pelosi? Is she causing them saying, hey, you're either with us or you're against us kind of attitude?
Oh, yeah. She definitely plays hardball when it comes to politics and her party. If you're, that's why Jeff Van Drew, the Democrat, once Democrat, elected Democrat from New Jersey, switched parties because he said, hey, I don't want to vote for impeachment. It's the first partisan impeachment in the history of our country. I don't want to be a part of destroying the republic on account of just winning a political battle in the near term. He left the party. He's a Republican now, and he's a friend, and I'm proud of him. That took a lot of guts. But, look, Pelosi's been co-opted by the left. The left controlled the agenda in the House. The left controlled the streets in places like Portlandia and Seattle and other places where the Democrat leaders have just totally laid down and let them walk over them to wreak havoc and destruction and violence on our fellow law-abiding American citizens. It's disgraceful.
It seems like Joe Biden's been kind of jumped to the left as well.
Well, they all have, because the left strategy is fear and intimidation. That's what they're doing in Portland, by the way, and other places. They're sowing fear and chaos, and they do the same thing. They don't do it violently on the side of the Ilhan Omars and the folks in the squad. They do intimidate, and they shame, and they attack their own, and Joe Biden wants to do whatever he needs to do to be president. Kamala Harris is no different. That's the worst kind of politician, by the way. At least Bernie Sanders, he's been a socialist for a long time, right? Before socialism was cool in the Democrat Party, so he actually believes this stuff. These guys, to me, again, are the most dangerous kind of politicians. They'll do and say whatever they need to for the sake of power, and that's America deserves better than that.
Yeah. Well, Congressman, this is Dave King. Good morning to you.
Hey, Dave. Good morning.
I said over a year ago, Congressman, I said on this show, the Democrats would burn this country to the ground to obtain power. And I was just half-heartedly saying that, but they will. I think, and I don't think they're demonstrating to me that they actually would. They simply would crave power that much. But what is frightening to me is watching particularly some of these things that you won't see on the mainstream news, but these mobs who are going in and looting and burning, and they're doing some of the most vile things to innocent human beings. And I don't see enough pushback in my mind from the Republicans. I just keep sitting on the sidelines saying, where are you guys? Where are you guys up in Washington? Can you not see can you not see what's going on? And why aren't you up raising hell?
I couldn't agree more. I have been beating the table with my party, and I generally don't throw my, I don't throw my party under the bus and try to act like some self-righteous legislator. But in this case, I've been pleading to join this president in formally and collectively condemning this. I've taken to the floor, even drafted legislation to increase the penalty for assaulting law enforcement officers at the federal level, anti-rioting at the federal level. We have a resolution that just uniformly condemns this and also calls for order, domestic tranquility, supports the administration's protecting of federal property and federal personnel. And this isn't even my sweet spot, per se. I'm not on Judiciary Committee, but we weren't going to sit back, Dave, and just let this void exist. It's one thing for the Democrats to be complicit in their silence, but for Republicans not to call for law and order, for Republicans not to call out this lawlessness, and the rogue prosecutors who have decided they're not going to go after the bad guys, they're going to harass our citizens who are trying to protect themselves because the police are so hamstrung, so demoralized, so demonized by the left, and defunded by the Democrat leaders in these cities. The citizens have no other choice but to protect themselves with their Second Amendment constitutional right, and you've got rogue prosecutors going after them and harassing them. So
and don't forget after the police as well.
Yeah. Well, the police are now, it's always a dangerous job, but I don't think they signed up to have people, throwing urine at them, which is the least of their concerns, because Molotov cocktails and bricks and commercial-grade fireworks. I cannot tell you how outrageous it is that not just the police, but that our law-abiding citizens are being terrorized. This is domestic terrorism, and the president has grounds for activating the Insurrection Act and just going in there and just taking care of business if he wants to. He's waiting on them to invite him in. That's traditionally the way you should do it because we respect local control and states' rights. But
they're obviously not going to do that.
Yeah,
and
that's my point.
I
they're not going to do it.
And watch this happening, and I cannot believe my eyes, Congressman. Where are we going to be in a year from now? Are we? If you don't, a basic principle. If you don't shut down these thugs, these Antifa and BLM thugs, they're just going to keep doing it, and it's going to get worse. And you're seeing an attitude now, even stretching into all other cities, where there are just groups of BLM thugs that are making life miserable, going into restaurants and talk about pounding on the table and demanding that people give the black salute with their fist, and if they don't, they scream at them. And this is just—it's just unbelievable that I'm living in America. I see this, and nobody is trying to put a stop to it. And I wish that Trump and many other citizens probably agree with me would just go in anyway and stop it, put a stop to it.
I agree with you. Again, that's why we have not just condemned it, but taken the time to have 3 pieces of legislation, and we can't get a whole lot of traction on it, even on the Republican side. And I also have said the president has all the legal justification for activating the Insurrection Act. The sort of defining threshold for Insurrection Act activation is when the obstruction of justice is so great that it's impractical to enforce the law. Let me tell you something, my friends. We're way past that point after 100 days of this chaos and anarchy and violence in Portland and other places. Crime's up, shootings up, cops are leaving the profession in droves. It's a terrible situation, and I agree with you. The president has got to continue to push back, and in some cases, like Portland, where they're not working with the feds, he needs to go in there, and he can do that unilaterally and clean that place up from all these thugs, as you mentioned, who are killing people in cold blood.
Mm.
Yes.
Like the police officers that were shot in Los Angeles, I believe. But we do have to take a quick break, Congressman. We will be right back on News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO with Congressman Arrington after this break. Welcome back to Mornings with Dave King and Matt Martin. We're going to go straight to the phones with Congressman Jodey Arrington. And Congressman, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is it seems like Nancy Pelosi is holding the House hostage. In other words, she said that nobody's going home until we vote on a stimulus bill, and she's done this for the second time, I guess. She's delayed the August recess as well. But it seems obvious to me it's not going to happen. Is this just politics?
Well, it is politics. We don't get our job done every year, whether it's budget or funding the government, having a fiscally responsible way to run this government. We go home. I have a bill that says no budget, no recess, but that just, it's just a broken part. It's a part of the broken culture here. But, yeah, she's playing politics. Look at her bill. That's all you have to do. Look at the bill they passed with zero Republican support, the HEROES Act. It's the largest funding bill in the history of our country. We have hundreds of billions of dollars already out the door. They've been appropriated but not spent. And she's putting provisions in her bill that have nothing, this is the shameful part of it, nothing to do with COVID and the national emergency and this crisis we're all working through. It's how to finance cannabis. It's money for the arts and humanities and the Kennedy Center. It's federal election policies, not to mention the bad policies of bailing out union pensions and the Postal Service without any reforms. It's not serious, okay? If we were serious, we could provide targeted and temporary assistance and redirect the monies we've already appropriated where we have the greatest need. And then ultimately, I think the biggest thing we've got to do is incentivize and encourage opening our country, getting people back to work, kids back to school. No government program will ever replace a paying job, okay, or a paying customer. So we can't just stay in this posture forever, and we can't reward that. We have to have the federal monies we've put out there with the incentives for the behavior that's going to be best for our kids, and for our families, and for our country, and that's what we need to be doing.
So there's a story, this was from a week ago, and I just want to know what your thoughts are on this, just because we've got an election coming up, and a lot of people are worried about mail-in ballots. But about a week ago, there was a story that came out that said in Georgia, about 150,000 of Georgia voters who requested an absentee ballot for the June primary later showed up to vote in person, and 1,000 of those votes made it through. Is this something that we're going to see a lot of after January or after November?
Yeah, Matt, unfortunately, this is why you don't have mass mail-in ballots, because you can't control for the error and the fraud. It's fraught with abuse, and you're going to have a delay in getting these ballots counted and recounted, which, right now the country has so much tension. It's a tinderbox. And the last thing we need is a contentious election outcome, but it will be because of the mail-in ballots, not to mention, again, the abuse that comes with it and the fraud that comes with it. So, yeah, it's a problem. That's a state-by-state decision. Texas is in a good place, but states like Georgia, unfortunately are not. So that's something we all have to keep in mind, because that peaceful transition to another Trump administration or peaceful transition of power in any kind has been a hallmark of our democracy, our republic. And I think right now, and I don't mean to make it sort of a hyperbolic statement, but I worry about that for the first time, at least in my lifetime, that there might be bigger problems for the country than just what we're seeing in Portland.
Okay, Congressman, we got about a minute and a half left. Is there something you want to specify that might be going on, or something you want to make sure people know?
Well, there was news yesterday. The Census Bureau put out, there was a survey, and that pre-COVID, not only did we have the lowest unemployment in 50 years, not only did the pro-growth, pro-energy tax policies of the Republicans and this president create higher wages for the lower income folks in 10 years, but we had the highest median household income ever, and on the record, in the history of our country. So I'd say this president and the Republicans got us to an unprecedented era of prosperity, and those are the kind of policies that are going to get us back on our feet as a country and back to a prosperous nation, the land of opportunity. So keep that in mind in the next 45 days or so.
Yeah, COVID's not going to last forever, and somebody's got to bring us out of this, and I don't think Joe Biden's that guy. So.
That's well said.
Okay. All right, Congressman.
Thank you, Congressman.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Blessings, guys. God bless West Texas. Bye-bye.
All right, we'll be back after these messages with the car pro, Jerry Reynolds.